Hey guys, tonight we drift far away from your buzzing inbox, the pile of unfolded laundry, and whatever questionable leftovers are lurking in your fridge. We're heading back thousands of years, into the soft, star-lit cradle of the ancient Mesopotamian night. You'll be boarding a creaky little reed boat tied loosely along the Euphrates River, where the current is slow and the world hums like a lullaby made of water, wind, and whispers. Above you, the date palms sway with sleepy elegance. Somewhere in the distance, a farmer slaps the side of a clay water jar, cursing its stubborn lid. The air smells like warm earth, wet reeds, and just a touch of something sweet. Probably fermented barley. You're probably thinking, hey, I could survive here. Well, no. Between the heat, crocodiles, and extremely judgmental gods, you'd last about 2 hours tops. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see how far this little boat floats. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The oar slips from your hand with a gentle splash, but the river doesn't mind. It carries you like a patient parent, like a song that's forgotten its last note, but still hums quietly under the breath. The water is dark, but not frightening. It glows in places, catching little reflections of starlight as if Ishtar herself had spilled a bowl of crushed diamonds across the sky, and they'd fallen gently to the surface. You push back against a folded cushion and let the boat turn lazily with the current. You've brought nothing with you. You need nothing. Tonight isn't about getting anywhere. The far bank glides by, mud brick homes, silent now, with doorways covered in woven reed curtains. A dog lifts its head as you pass, yawns, and goes back to sleep. The frogs chirp in a syncopated rhythm, like little clay drums being tapped by the gods of twilight. Your boat smells of sun-dried stalks and cool river mist. These boats, kufus or reed coracles depending on who you ask, are ancient marvels, coated with bitumen to keep them watertight. Historians still argue whether they were more symbolic than practical, but you're here to prove they float just fine when you're half asleep and dream drunk. Somewhere behind the horizon, a ziggurat points into the velvet sky like the tip of a forgotten pen, trying to rewrite the stars. You wonder absently what's being recorded up there tonight. Probably the same as every night. Who owed grain, who kissed who, and which god was cranky about being ignored. From the western bank, you hear the rhythmic splosh of someone pouring water into a channel, irrigation, even under moonlight. The water finds its path obediently, guided by the will of those clever enough to dig the first canals humanity ever built. That's Mesopotamia for you, cradle of civilization, mother of midnight farmers. Your boat slides around a bend. On a raised patch of earth, a cluster of torches mark a small village shrine. It's unattended now, but earlier this evening, someone placed fresh flowers, lilies maybe, and a neat little pile of date cakes. Offerings to Ea, lord of the sweet waters, or maybe to Namu, the primeval sea goddess. Who can say? Mesopotamian religion was kind of a choose-your-own divine adventure. Some even carved tiny model boats to float down the river as symbolic prayers. You wonder what yours would ask for. You blink and spot something glowing under the surface. A trick of the light? A lost oil lamp? Or maybe the river remembering an old story. It does that sometimes. Nearby, a heron stands knee-deep in the shallows. It stares at you like it knows your Netflix password and is judging your taste. Then it lifts off, slow and regal, wings brushing the moonlight. You reach into the water. It's cooler than you expect, soft against your fingers. Something brushes your hand, maybe a fish, maybe a river spirit with a sense of humor. In the reeds, cicadas sing their metallic lullaby. One long, high note fades just as a breeze stirs your little boat. The stars ripple in the reflection, dancing gently with each shift in current. You imagine the constellations whispering to each other, chuckling over some ancient joke no one remembers the punchline to. Behind you, the lights of the nearest village shrink to flickers, like memories gently folding themselves away. The air carries hints of fire smoke and crushed grass. You hear a quiet splash, someone tossing in laundry. Or maybe the river again, dropping its own thoughts into the conversation. And just when your eyelids start to drift heavier, a nightbird calls, not sharp, but low and yawning, like it too can't quite decide whether to sleep or sing. So you lie back, arms folded behind your head, and let the boat float without direction or deadline. You're not headed toward Babylon or Ur or any map point historians have yet to fight over. You're just floating, existing, like a star not yet named, waiting to be noticed. The night is deep, but not dark. The boat is small, but not alone. The Euphrates carries you forward, and you let it. The current hums softly beneath you, a steady rhythm as natural as your breath. Above, the sky deepens into that inky Mesopotamian velvet, soaked in starlight, pierced occasionally by the slow arc of a shooting star. It's the kind of night that makes you feel like the world is whispering secrets, just for you. Or maybe it's the frogs again. Hard to tell. The river bends, and suddenly you're drifting past a grove of date palms, their long fronds rustling gently, like someone turning the pages of a very old book. The air changes, warmer here, richer. You inhale, and it smells of sweet sap, river mist, and something baking. Somewhere behind those palms, someone's still tending a clay oven. Probably for the morning's flatbread, or maybe they just forgot to turn it off. Mesopotamia's version of leaving the stove on. You catch a soft flicker, torchlight through the trees. There's a family gathering in the shadow of a storage hut, baskets brimming with dates piled high around them. The father yawns as he ties a cloth over the baskets, and the mother hums an old tune, guiding a toddler back into the warmth of a reed mat. Their voices blend with the night like threads in a tapestry. You catch bits and pieces, names, measurements, what sounds like a joke about a lazy goat. You smile. These people invented writing, built the first cities, and domesticated barley. But also, they grumbled about goats. Humanity's been incredibly consistent. One child, still awake, runs out from the circle and points at the stars. "The scorpion!" he squeals. A sleepy sibling grumbles, "That's not the scorpion, dummy." And just like that, you're back at every sibling argument ever, across all of time. Above them, the constellation the boy pointed to twinkles brighter. Mesopotamians were keen stargazers, you know. The earliest star charts, carved into stone, came from these lands. They believed the heavens were a divine script, a kind of cosmic cuneiform, and that every flicker meant something. Navigation, harvest time, the mood of a god, or just a reminder that even the stars bicker sometimes. You pass the grove's edge and glimpse the farmer's hut, modest but tidy. Baskets of grain, bundles of herbs tied from the rafters, and a rolled-up fishing net leaning against the door. A small clay amulet hangs above the entrance, shaped like a bull's head. Likely a charm for strength, protection, or possibly just to keep the neighbour's goat out. Again, goats. Here's a quirky little tidbit you'd probably miss if you weren't floating slowly by. Some villagers in this region used river stones as family markers. Not engraved, not shaped, just ordinary stones selected for their smoothness, colour, or vibe. One per family. They'd line them along the bank so the river would know their house. Tonight, you pass several of these lined up like sleepy guardians, damp and glinting in the torchlight. As your boat glides past, the mother at the hut looks up, not startled, just curious. She gives a soft nod, the kind that says, "You're part of the night now. Float on." You nod back, because what else are you going to do? Yell, "Hey, nice dates?" Nah, let the moment breathe. A breeze shifts direction, carrying the low thump of something rhythmic. Drums? No, too soft. A mortar and pestle? Someone's grinding herbs. Maybe tamarisk, a desert shrub they used for medicine, warding, or, get this, as love spells. Crush the leaves under a waxing moon, one scribe once wrote, and whisper the name of your heart's desire. Historians still argue whether it was a spell, a joke, or an early marketing ploy by the tamarisk industry. The sound fades behind you, replaced by the gentle lap of water against mud. You pass another dock, this one smaller. Just a couple of poles and a reed mat rolled tight. It smells of fish oil and river moss. A pair of sandals lie neatly beside it. Someone's gone in barefoot, probably to check on nets, or maybe just to walk. You lean over the side, watching as your reflection stretches long and dreamy across the ripples. For a moment, the stars above and the ones below seem to connect. Like the river is stitching together heaven and earth, one sleepy swirl at a time. Then a sound, soft and tentative, a song, high airy notes, delicate and slow, like someone singing not to be heard, but to remember. It drifts from deeper within the grove, where another fire glows low. A young woman sits on a woven stool, cradling an 8-string lyre, her eyes half-lidded as her fingers pluck the tune from memory. The lyrics? Lost to the breeze. But the melody speaks of longing, waiting, of lovers who promised to meet by the water, and never quite made it. This is one of those nights, isn't it? Where every sound feels older than you, like it's been looping quietly for 1,000 years, waiting for someone calm enough to hear it. A cicada buzzes. A frog interrupts the tune with a dramatic croak. You chuckle. Somewhere, even now, a Mesopotamian poet is rolling in their grave. Your boat shifts again, moving out of range of the song, gliding into deeper water. The torches are fewer here, just starlight and shadows now. You wrap the blanket tighter around your shoulders, not from cold, but for the comfort of weight. The boat creaks gently, the water soothes. And the grove, the family, the music, they fade behind you, but stay with you, like a song you don't quite remember the words to, but somehow still hum when you sleep. The night deepens like a bowl turned slowly upside down, edges darkening first, then the centre, until only starlight remains. The Euphrates carries you forward, your reed boat drifting through velvet black water, hushed by the songs of reeds brushing its sides. No paddling, no guiding, just the slow embrace of a river older than memory. The trees thin out along the banks, replaced by open marshland. Tall papyrus-like plants sway gently in the breeze, their reflections shimmering like columns of ghostly ink. Somewhere nearby, a toad lets out a series of gulps, as if trying to remember the words to a forgotten hymn. You chuckle softly, just once, and it disappears into the hush, like it never existed. To your left, a low mud-brick dock emerges from the water. It leans slightly to one side, as though it's been listening too closely to the whispering wind. You notice bundles stacked neatly along its surface, bundles of rushes, sorted and tied. Building material, perhaps? Or maybe they're woven mats, fresh from the hands of local weavers. In Mesopotamia, these reeds were life. They made homes, roofs, beds, even writing tablets. Entire cities, if you squinted hard enough. And those tablets? Picture this. Someone crouched on a flat stone, stylus in hand, squinting at the twilight while scribbling a list of fish owed to a neighbour. Not a poem, not a grand myth, just a really passive-aggressive grocery list. That's how much they loved cuneiform, the first known written script. Little wedges pressed into wet clay like breadcrumbs for future historians. As your boat glides on, you notice one of those clay tablets resting atop a post, likely drying in the breeze. The faint glimmer of moonlight catches the grooves. You can't read it, but you imagine it says something thrilling like, 2 goats, 4 jars, late again. A sudden flicker on the right bank catches your eye, a lantern hanging from the doorway of a fisherman's hut. The hut is simple. Woven reed walls, a palm frond roof, a narrow pier stretching into the dark water. A man stands barefoot at the edge, line in hand, eyes cast upward, as if he's fishing for stars instead of carp. He hasn't noticed you, or maybe he has, and just doesn't care. It's a quiet night, a sacred one, maybe. He pulls something in, slowly, gently, and a fish flops at his feet, silver against the dark wood. He murmurs a short phrase in a language too old to translate. Probably thanks, or a request, or just a reminder that the river still listens. You pass silently, and the lantern light dims behind you. Your boat creaks again, this time accompanied by a faint chime. You glance down to find it, a small bell tied near the bow, half submerged, ringing only when the current nudges it just right. Who tied it there? You don't know, but in old Mesopotamian folklore, bells warded off wandering spirits, especially those that clung to rivers at night. They believed water could carry more than just fish and reeds. Sometimes it brought memories. Sometimes it brought echoes. Some even thought that rivers remembered things, that each ripple carried a word, and each bend in the current replayed ancient conversations. You listen closer. Maybe it's true. Further ahead, the river narrows slightly. The banks press inward, cradling you like arms drawing close. Overhead, the sky seems lower. You reach up, just for a moment, and it almost feels like you could brush the edge of a star. You spot movement in the water, a sleek body gliding beneath the surface. A river otter, maybe, or something stranger. In early Mesopotamian myths, the gods of water didn't always take human form. Sometimes they appeared as animals, or light, or just the sound of your name whispered from nowhere. You lean over the side of the boat again, half expecting to see glowing eyes. Instead, you find your own reflection, pale and a little drowsy. You look like a scholar who fell asleep on a scroll and woke up drifting through time. Not a bad look. Another breeze stirs the air. It smells faintly of incense now. Frankincense, maybe. Or myrrh. Offerings. Somewhere nearby, a shrine is burning. Not a grand temple, but a river shrine. A tiny altar tucked between roots and reeds. You glimpse it as you pass. A flat stone slab with tiny jars set in a circle, their contents glowing faintly. Someone has been here recently. The jars are still warm, and a curl of smoke rises in a lazy spiral. One jar is filled with barley, another with dark honey, a third with grapes? No, dried figs. You blink, then smile. Classic combination. The gods were foodies too. Historians still debate whether these river offerings were to specific deities, like Enki, god of water and wisdom, or to the river itself, personified as a living force. Maybe it doesn't matter. The act is what counts. The stillness, the reverence, the trust in the unseen. Your boat turns slightly, nudged by a playful current. A few reeds brush the sides, like fingers trailing along fabric. You stretch your legs slightly, then let them relax again. The rhythm of the water is a lullaby now, soft and slow and ancient. A frog chirps, then another, then a third, slightly off-key. They fall into rhythm again, like musicians who've played together for centuries. The night orchestra resumes. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. No thoughts of tomorrow. No pressure to remember, to plan, to fix. Just this moment, this quiet, this float. The river widens again, stretching like a yawn beneath the weight of the stars. Your boat slows as the current eases, more of a glide now than a drift. Water laps softly along the sides, and every movement feels purposeful, ancient, as though the Euphrates remembers this route better than you do. On the far bank, the silhouette of a village loom house emerges, a long, low structure with its walls partially open to the air. It's built from reeds and mud brick, its thatched roof crowned with hanging bundles of dyed wool in sunset tones: ochre, pomegranate, indigo, dusty rose. Even under moonlight, the colours seem to hum with warmth. Inside, several upright looms stand side by side, half shrouded in shadows. One still has a cloth in progress, hanging like a sleeping tapestry, threads frozen mid-weave. Somewhere nearby, a woman hums, a tune soft enough to mistake for the wind. You picture her winding thread around her fingers, guiding the shuttle like a lullaby. The Mesopotamians wove textiles not just for clothes, but for ceremony, trade, and tribute. Fabrics dyed with rare roots and shells travelled as far as the Indus Valley. And those patterns? Some mirrored constellations. Others told family stories, or were meant to ward off the evil eye. A fringe here, a twist there. You'd never know unless someone taught you. One loom near the open wall sways slightly in the breeze, and for a moment you swear it's not empty. A shadow sits there, still and tall, hands poised just above the warp. But the breeze passes, the figure vanishes, and it's just your imagination. Probably. Maybe. Okay, maybe don't look too long. Your boat glides on, and the scent of wool and dye fades into river mist. The air thickens with dew, and you pull your blanket higher again. A fig tree leans over the water, its roots curled around a rock, like fingers holding something precious. Fig leaves rustle with a silken whisper as you pass beneath them. You remember hearing that some Mesopotamians believed fig trees housed spirits, protective ones, usually, though occasionally mischievous. One fringe belief held that fig trees could record dreams, holding them in their bark until someone whispered them aloud. You reach out, brush a low-hanging leaf, and wonder what secrets that bark might be hiding. Probably a few very odd dreams involving donkeys and overcooked lentils. Ahead, a pair of torches flickers on the right bank, marking a ceremonial platform half hidden behind tall reeds. A clay ramp leads from the river up to a raised stage surrounded by low stone benches. You recognize the layout. This is a harvest blessing site, used just after the barley is collected. The torches frame a carved relief on a stone slab, showing a stylized figure holding a basket of grain. It's too dark to see clearly, but the silhouette is unmistakable. A priestess, hair in long braids, eyes open unnaturally wide. Some believe these statues weren't meant to depict real people, but gods wearing human form. Others think they were simply reminders to behave. Don't steal grain, or creepy-eyed grain lady will know. Historians still debate whether these rural shrines were supervised by official temple staff or simply maintained by the community. Some think travelling priests visited monthly. Others say the villagers ran their own rituals. Part chore, part party. As if on cue, a bowl of incense smoulders near the statue's base. Someone was just here. The faintest trail of smoke drifts across the water. You inhale, it's cedar and dried mint, a calming blend once used to lull infants to sleep and wake the favour of the gods. It's working. You feel heavier, in the best way. On one of the stone benches, you spot a cup, broad-rimmed, made of dark clay. Abandoned or forgotten? Hard to say, but it's still half full. Offerings weren't always poured out. Sometimes shared sips between humans and the divine were part of the ritual. You drink, I drink. Nobody gets cursed. A splash startles you gently, not close, just enough to pull your eyes toward the centre of the river. A fish jumps, breaking the surface with a silver arc, then another, then nothing. You lean back. The stars above wheel slowly across the sky, pulling you with them. And just for a second, you feel untethered. Adrift, not just in the river, but in time itself, like you're floating through a story that's still being written. The riverbank shifts again. Tall mud brick granaries rise along the slope, their walls thick and windowless, with only small slits near the top for airflow. These were the lifeblood of the city-states, structures where barley, dates, lentils, and chickpeas were stored under seal and record. And yes, someone had to keep track of it all. You wonder if the people working here knew they were inventing bureaucracy. Probably not. They were just trying to keep the neighbour's goat from eating a month's worth of chickpeas. Near one granary, a small clay tablet sits on a ledge, broken clean down the centre. You wonder what it once said. 10 jars to Uruk? Return the ox, or else? Or maybe just a bored scribe doodling what was either a star chart or an angry duck. Scholars still argue. The boat floats past a wide drainage channel, carved long ago to divert floodwaters in the wet season. It cuts into the bank like a sleeping mouth, dry now, but still whispering old stories in the breeze. You try to listen, but they've already moved on. You let your fingers trail in the water. It's cool, smooth, and strangely familiar, like it's touched every dream you've ever forgotten. Behind you, the night deepens. Ahead, the river calls. And always, always, the stars drift overhead, drawing you onward. The Euphrates narrows again, curling like a serpent between earthen banks glazed with silver moonlight. Your boat rocks gently in its embrace, slowed by silt and shadow. Each bend feels deliberate, like the river is guiding you somewhere soft, quiet, and wrapped in time. To your left, a wide grove of date palms sways lazily. Their tall trunks rise like temple columns, leaves fanning out in slow arcs above the darkened earth. Beneath them, clusters of dates hang low, some heavy, some already fallen, forming sweet, sticky carpets for wild boars and nightbirds. You pass close enough to hear a fruit drop, a soft thunk, followed by rustling. Someone or something is already enjoying a midnight snack. The date palm was sacred to the Mesopotamians, not just for its fruit, but for the shade, the wood, the wine, the rope, the ritual. There's an old Sumerian saying, "A man without a date tree is a man without a home." And here, with the moon caught in the leaves, you see why. A low hum reaches your ears, almost like a lullaby. But it's not a voice. It's insects, hundreds of them, singing in perfect dissonance. Fireflies flicker between the palm trunks like shy spirits, blinking Morse code. Their lights reflect across the water, dotting the surface like spilled stars. On the right bank, something glints. A stone bench, half sunk in reeds, faces the river like an invitation. It's carved with patterns. Fish, reeds, swirling water lines. You imagine someone once sitting there every morning, waiting for boats, or gods, Or both. It looks just worn enough to have heard secrets. By now, the scent of the palms is thick in the air, syrupy and golden, cut with hints of river clay. It's grounding. Sweet, but earthy, like everything here. You breathe deep and let it settle behind your eyes. A little farther downstream, nestled between trees, stands a small open-air kitchen, if you can call it that. A circular hearth, ringed with stones, a leaning pot on a tripod, and a clay shelf stacked with bowls. The embers are faintly glowing, smoke trailing upward like a thread. Someone cooked here recently. You can smell it, lentils and garlic, with a faint tang of coriander.
You catch yourself leaning toward the scent, half expecting a hand to offer you a bowl. Mesopotamian meals weren't complicated, but they were hearty. Grains, legumes, dates, goat cheese, sometimes beer, often beer. They brewed it thick and cloudy, served it in communal bowls, sipping through long reed straws. It was social, sacred, and, well, safer than the river water. One clay jug near the hearth is still half full, its mouth covered with palm leaf. You wouldn't drink it, of course. You're just a traveler in time. But something about its presence feels generous, like the cook left it out for wandering spirits, or weary boats like yours. A dog barks in the distance once, then twice. You can't see it, but the sound rolls over the river like a pebble skipping across silence. Dogs were common in Mesopotamian homes, both for work and companionship. They even had their own gods, like Gula's hound, who appeared in healing rituals. Funny to think someone might have prayed, "Please save my son," and also, "Can you make sure Bristle doesn't chase the oxen again?" As the dog's echo fades, you spot a stone carving ahead, a flat relief mounted on a plinth near the water's edge. This one is different. A scene shows a man holding a bunch of reeds in one hand and pointing to the sky with the other. Around him stars, a crescent moon, what might be Saturn. The Mesopotamians, of course, were stargazers. They mapped the heavens before many even named them. Historians still argue whether these carvings were instructional star charts or mythic tributes, but you suspect it's both. Everything here walks the line between science and spirit. The boat turns gently again, and your eyes are drawn upward. The stars are sharper now, reflecting off the water with startling clarity. You feel like you're floating through a mirror, unsure which direction is sky and which is river. A goose honks in the distance, loud, confused, probably angry. You smile. A splash nearby draws your gaze. Just beneath the surface, a school of tiny fish darts through the shallows, lit faintly by moonlight. You lean over the edge and watch them swirl like silver ink. These fish were once caught in woven baskets, simple tools, elegant solutions, and sometimes the baskets weren't for catching. They were offerings, filled with grain and sent floating downriver during festivals. One fringe belief held that these grain boats carried messages to the gods. Floating prayers, basically. Some would vanish. Some returned days later, half-eaten by birds, interpreted like omens. Oh look, the fig boat came back upside down. Not great. Your boat glides past a low hill topped with a watchtower, or what remains of it, half collapsed, overgrown. Vines cling to its sides, blooming with pale flowers you can't name. A few birds roost along the ledge, heads tucked under wings, tails fluttering slightly. Someone once stood there, torch in hand, counting stars between shifts. A gust of wind pushes gently from the west. You feel it brush your skin, cool and damp, like breath from a giant sleeping nearby. The reeds rustle in response. And for a moment, everything moves at once. The trees, the stars, the boat, the river. It all breathes. Then, stillness again. That quiet, almost sacred stillness that makes you feel like you're being cradled in someone's forgotten dream. You lean back, let your eyes close halfway, and listen. To the distant hiss of insects, the soft slosh of water, the rustle of palm leaves overhead. It's not silence. It's a lullaby sung by time itself. The Euphrates holds you. The stars guide you. And still, you drift. The current thickens slightly, urging your reed boat onward, tugging you around a slow curve in the river. You stretch your legs beneath the woven mat and pull your blanket closer. Yes, even in ancient Mesopotamia. The night can get a little chilly, especially when drifting past reeds taller than your boat and thicker than a royal guard's beard. As the river narrows again, you notice rows of terraced gardens climbing up the left bank. Not quite the famed hanging gardens, although some believe they may have existed nearby, but these are real enough and beautiful in their own right. Narrow steps of soil, each bordered by packed clay and stone, hold vegetables, herbs, and barley shoots, all glowing faintly silver in the starlight. Ancient irrigation channels snake through the terraces, feeding water gently downhill in a soft trickle. These channels were part of the Mesopotamians' genius, the earliest known irrigation systems, carved by hand and maintained with a level of detail that would make modern city planners cry a little. You hear the faint hiss of water as it meets dry soil, the scent of mint and wild onion rising into the night.
Near the top terrace, a small altar glimmers. Just a flat rock with a shallow bowl and a few offerings, a handful of barley, a slice of dried fig, and what might be a carved amulet shaped like a fish. Offerings like these weren't rare. They weren't grand either. Just simple gifts, quiet thanks whispered to river spirits and field gods, and to the occasional nosy neighbour who might notice if you skipped the tradition. A soft rustling comes from the reeds to your right. Not wind this time, something moving, something bipedal. You tense slightly, then relax when a man steps into view. He wears a short tunic, a leather belt, and a torch held aloft, its flame barely flickering in the breeze. He doesn't seem surprised to see your boat. In fact, he doesn't seem to see it at all. He's chanting quietly in a rhythm that matches his steps. The words are ancient Sumerian, or maybe Akkadian, and beyond your understanding, but their cadence is hypnotic. He moves from plant to plant, sprinkling what might be ash or ground date pits from a clay bowl. This is a field blessing, a ritual of protection. Not just for crops, but for balance, for seasons behaving themselves, for water not disappearing in the heat of summer. You wonder how many generations have walked this same line, torch in hand, ash in bowl, prayer on lips. He finishes his chant, tips the bowl over the earth, and disappears into the darkness, leaving only the faint scent of smoke and something floral behind. You blink. Was he real? Or some kind of agricultural ghost, doomed to eternally overwater the lentils? Historians still debate how many of these nighttime rituals were officially sanctioned by temple priests versus quietly carried out by families on their own. You get the sense that both lived comfortably side by side. Temple rites in daylight, personal offerings by moonlight. As the torchlight fades, your boat slips past a cluster of fishermen's huts, built right along the river's edge. They're humble, woven reed walls, flat clay roofs, nets hung like spiderwebs to dry. A few boats are tied to stakes in the mud, gently bobbing in the current. You catch a whiff of smoked carp, a Mesopotamian favourite, often wrapped in fig leaves and slow-cooked on hot stones. Beside one hut, a fishing net still wriggles, not from fish, from frogs. One leaps out dramatically, lands in the shallows, and stares at you like you're trespassing. You nod in apology. Frogs were actually symbols of abundance and rebirth, creatures that emerged with the floods and sang songs to the moon. One fringe belief said frogs could predict the weather. Another said they were little messengers for Enki, god of water and mischief. So maybe don't insult them. You pass a wooden pole strung with clay chimes, gently clinking in the breeze. The sound is warm and hollow, like distant laughter. These chimes weren't just decoration. They were protective charms, meant to ward off illness and evil spirits. They worked best, apparently, if you didn't laugh at how off-key they were. Your boat slows near a docked cargo barge, larger than yours and covered in woven sacks and jars sealed with reed stoppers. A cat lounges atop a stack of date baskets, tail twitching lazily. Cats, too, were honoured here, not worshipped like in Egypt, but deeply respected. They kept the granaries free of pests, and in some texts they even appear in dream omens. A cat crossing your path could mean anything from fortune to more cats. One jar is cracked open slightly, revealing a stash of sesame seeds. Yes, the same sesame you sprinkle on bagels. The Mesopotamians cultivated it thousands of years ago, pressing it for oil, mixing it into flatbreads, or burning it for light. Some even thought sesame oil carried protective properties, and they'd anoint doorways with it during rituals. You reach for a floating twig and swirl it through the water absent-mindedly. The stars reflect across the ripples like scattered gems, blurring with every motion. The night air grows denser here, thicker with dew, richer with scent. Somewhere far off, a reed flute begins to play. The tune is soft, circular, with no real beginning or end. It weaves through the riverbank like a lullaby, making your eyelids just a little heavier. These flutes were often used by shepherds who carved them from river reeds and played for their flocks, or for themselves, watching the stars and wondering about their place in the vastness. Some believed the flute's tone could guide wandering souls, especially those lost in the flood seasons. And maybe that's what you are tonight, a gentle, wandering soul. You lie back, hands folded over your chest, and let the song wash over you. The stars above, the river below, the hush of time in your ears. You're not entirely sure if you're awake or dreaming. But here, it doesn't really matter. You drift further into the deep blue hush of the night, the river guiding your little boat like a lullaby sung in currents. The sky above has turned to deep indigo, punctured by constellations once charted by ancient stargazers, some of whom believed the heavens were messages written by the gods in glittering ink. The Mesopotamians weren't casual about the sky. Oh no, they were obsessive. You float past a small watchtower rising on a mound near the riverbank, its rooftop platform open to the heavens. A solitary figure stands motionless at its edge, staring upward, bronze armlet catching the moonlight. He's one of the Umanu, a scholar priest tasked with recording the patterns of stars and planets, not for science as we know it, but to decode divine warnings, prophecies, and calendar rhythms. You glance up too. That bright star near the moon? That might be Ishtar, goddess of love and war, to the people below. They called her the Queen of Heaven. Historians still argue whether her star was Venus or some composite celestial body, but under this sky it's simply beautiful. The tower fades into the night behind you as the river veers once more and the air takes on a tangy scent. Clay, smoke, and something sweet. Soon you glide beside a low-lying village, hugging the curve of the river like a sleeping cat. Mud brick houses, each flat-roofed and stacked slightly off-kilter, rise 2 or 3 stories high. Some families still sleep on the roofs in the cool night air, their silhouettes barely visible under thin blankets. From one rooftop, a faint flicker catches your eye. A young girl lighting a small clay lamp, shielding it with her palm as it ignites. She sets it in a niche beside a hand-painted amulet, a fish surrounded by 7 dots. That's not a random doodle. That's a protective apotropaic symbol, a way to keep bad dreams away. Fish were sacred to Enki, god of water and wisdom, and the 7 dots. Scholars are still debating their exact origin. Some say they represented protective spirits. Others claim it was a code for a constellation long forgotten. A low chant echoes from somewhere deeper in the village. You strain to listen. It's not prayer this time. It's a song, a lullaby perhaps. The words are ancient Akkadian, but the melody is unmistakable. A mother singing her baby to sleep. You can almost see her there, swaying in the doorway, her hand patting the back of a bundle wrapped in dyed linen. Your boat glides past a jetty where a few young men sit cross-legged, quietly playing a board game etched into a stone slab. It's the royal game of one of the world's oldest known games, involving luck, strategy, and a surprising amount of trash talk, if their laughter is anything to go by. One boy slaps down a carved token with flair. The others groan. Clearly, he's been practicing. As you drift on, you pass a half-submerged storage platform, supported by woven reed stilts. Clay jars and baskets of grain sit on it, protected by linen tarps, and possibly a particularly mean-looking goose standing guard. You think it hisses at you. Rude. One of the jars has been cracked open, its lid askew. You catch a glimpse of dried dates, glossy and dark, packed with chopped nuts. Mesopotamians used dates for everything: sweetener, bread filler, even wine. And if you believed certain ancient texts, they could also be used to cure curses, though results may have varied. Ask your local priest-astrologer if date consumption is right for your affliction. The river bends again, and a patch of tall papyrus sways gently beside your boat. You spot a cluster of ibis birds, long-legged and still, standing like white statues under the stars. In some regions, birds like these were seen as omens, their sudden arrival or departure signalling changes in the year's fortunes. One of them blinks at you. You blink back. That's probably enough diplomacy for tonight. In the next village clearing, you spy a group of elders seated in a wide circle, cloaked in wool and surrounded by young listeners, their eyes wide and heads tilted. One elder leans forward, his hands gesturing through the air as he recounts a tale, his voice rising and falling like a river song. You can't hear the whole story, but you catch phrases: the storm god who lost his ox, and the moon that forgot how to rise. It's pure myth, deliciously strange, the kind of story that's been told 100 ways for 1,000 years. And still, each child listens like it's the very first time. You smile to yourself. Myths were never just stories here. They were the scaffolding of belief, the bedtime glue between ordinary life and divine chaos. That ox probably became a star. That moon likely made a deal with Enlil. No one knows for sure. And that's half the fun. As the children start to nod off, their heads lolling against parents and cousins alike, the elder leans back and hums a soft, final note. It's the kind of silence that feels earned, like the closing chord of a song played on the oldest harp in the world. Farther down the bank, a tiny shrine glows with firelight. You can just make out the figure etched in relief. A woman with long, flowing hair, arms lifted to the sky. It might be Inanna. It might be someone older, someone unnamed. The line between gods and ancestors was never fixed in this world. You pass a raft tied loosely to a pole, covered in dyed wool blankets and pottery bowls, each filled with a different coloured powder. Red ochre, lapis blue, ash white, saffron yellow. This is no market. These are the tools of a ritual painter, someone who decorates sacred walls and ceremonial masks. A fringe theory, shared by one eccentric scholar at the Museum of Near Eastern Antiquities, claims that certain pigments were believed to sing if ground under moonlight. You squint at the bowls. They seem quiet, but still. You tuck that idea in your mind, like a strange dream to revisit later. The boat rocks gently, the water murmuring against its sides, and the smell of earth, spice, and river dust drifts over you like a woven blanket. It's quiet now, almost too quiet. Then, somewhere in the trees, a nightjar calls, a long, trilling note that rises and fades like a secret being released. You smile again. This world is rich, layered, and utterly alive, even when it's asleep. The current cradles your boat, like a mother rocking a child, and you slip deeper into the gentle embrace of the river. Each lap of water against the reed hull is like a whispered verse from a lullaby older than writing. The scent of water hyacinth mingles with the warm, loamy perfume of silt. The sky above has cooled to a velvet black, stars now crowding the heavens like guests gathering at a sacred banquet. Somewhere overhead, the Milky Way stretches like a great celestial canal, one the ancient Sumerians believed the gods used to ferry their divine barges. They called it the River of Heaven. You, of course, are floating on the junior version, but tonight it feels just as divine. A light mist drapes itself over the riverbank as you approach a section where the trees thicken, tamarisk and poplar lining the banks like sentinels. Here you notice tiny lanterns glowing in the undergrowth, amber and quiet, swaying like fireflies in suspended cages. You blink, lean closer. They're real lamps, clay saucers of oil balanced atop stone stacks, offerings, or perhaps waymarks. You've stumbled upon a hidden ritual grove. You can barely make out the figures seated within, robed, still, their heads bowed low. They form a circle, and at its centre a priestess with an intricately braided headdress stands barefoot on damp earth, her arms raised, sleeves sliding down to reveal spirals painted along her forearms. She chants softly. It's not a performance. It's a whisper to something older than the city-states. Mainstream historians agree that sacred groves existed across Mesopotamia, especially near rivers, spots believed to be touched by both the earth goddess Kai and the freshwater god Enki. But fringe researchers claim some groves were actually acoustic chambers, planted for sound. Supposedly, the layout of trees and water amplified the voice of a ritual leader, turning whispers into thunder, or at least a pretty good surround sound effect. You hold your breath as a breeze carries the end of her chant across the water. It sounds like a question you can almost understand, something about rain, or maybe forgiveness. And just like that, the figures rise and disappear into the woods one by one, like shadows at daybreak. You drift on, the lamps growing smaller behind you. Soon, the trees fall away again, giving you back the wide, open view of the floodplain. You pass a stone marker, mossy and worn with age, half sunk in the reeds. A carved fish, an arrow, and the symbol for barley. A signpost, maybe, or a record. It's all written in cuneiform, the world's earliest system of writing. And here's your Mesopotamian fact of the night. The Sumerians first wrote with sharpened reeds pressed into soft clay, not for poetry or spells, but for inventory. Yes, the birth of writing was basically a spreadsheet. Your ancestors wanted to make sure nobody ran off with 3 extra goats and claimed it was an accident. But of course, not all cuneiform was so practical. You pass another sign soon after, carved into an obelisk tilted like a sleepy tooth. This one's purely poetic, a praise hymn to a local goddess, etched in swooping wedges. There's something deeply human in that. How we started by tracking barley and ended up chasing gods with styluses. Suddenly, the river widens again and takes you past a strange sight. A floating festival barge, anchored midstream and covered in faded canopies. It's clearly been moored for the night. Lanterns dimmed, music silenced, but its colours still linger in the moonlight: saffron, lapis, and bronze. These barges weren't for parties, not exactly. They were ceremonial processional boats, used to transport statues of gods during important festivals. Each city had its patron deity, and when their statue visited neighbouring towns by river, it was a very big deal. Think Olympics meets Met Gala, with incense. Your boat slips silently past the sleeping barge. You spot a few attendants curled beneath the canopy, their linen robes twitching in dreams. One mumbles something and hugs a sack of figs to his chest. You don't judge. We all have our comfort food. Beyond the barge, you pass a grove of pomegranate trees, their swollen fruits glowing dimly in the moonlight. Some hang low over the river, casting reflections like bleeding lanterns. Pomegranates were symbols of fertility and power, favoured in myths and even buried with the dead. A single fruit could carry 100 meanings, or just be dessert. Historians can't decide if they were eaten daily or reserved for elite offerings. Your guess? A bit of both. A soft splash distracts you. You glance down to see a river turtle paddling calmly alongside your boat, its shell trailing thin strands of green riverweed, like old prayers. You blink, and it dives, disappearing into the darkness. Ahead, you hear the gentle rattle of a water wheel, rhythmically dipping and lifting from the river. You're near a small irrigation outpost. On the bank, a boy dozes with his head against a jar of dates. His ox, tethered lazily nearby, flicks its tail at mosquitoes, seemingly just as sleepy. The wheel creaks, then clunks, and you imagine the canal beyond being gently refilled, one scoop at a time. These canals were the lifeblood of the Mesopotamian world, bringing water from the rivers to the farmlands miles inland. Entire cities lived or died by their flow. Some say early engineers even consulted astrologers before redirecting water, just to keep the gods in the loop. And here's a lesser-known tidbit. Some canals were deliberately curved to prevent the evil eye from travelling in straight lines. Practical? Maybe not. But charming? Absolutely. You float on, the wheel's rhythm fading behind you. Now, the night feels softer, like a song slowing at the final verse. The river narrows again, and the banks draw closer. Reeds rise higher, trees bow lower. You feel it in your bones. The land is winding down. The river narrows gently, as if it's guiding you into a secret chamber. Papyrus reeds crowd the edges like silent watchers, their feathery tops brushing against the sky. The moon is a pale crescent now, and the stars shimmer faintly, blurred by the thin mist curling above the water. You can hear the faint croak of frogs somewhere in the reeds, a steady percussion that blends with the river's hush. Your boat glides past an ancient, half-ruined ziggurat rising against the night sky, a shadowed silhouette layered with age and mystery. Its stepped terraces look like giant stairs to the heavens, inviting and intimidating all at once. Historians still debate whether ziggurats served primarily as temples or as astronomical observatories, but tonight you sense both. Imagine priests and priests-to-be climbing these steps by torchlight, their breath visible in the cool air, chanting in low voices. The building's massive mud bricks seem to hold the echoes of countless prayers. On a nearby ledge, you notice a collection of clay cuneiform tablets stacked neatly, as if awaiting someone's return. These tablets were the notebooks of the ancient world, recording everything from laws to love poems, business contracts to star charts. Some tablets have tiny finger smudges, the ancient equivalent of fingerprints, connecting us across millennia to scribes who shaped civilization with reed styluses. There's a quirky fact about these tablets. In some temples, scribes would bake their writings under the sun or in kilns, turning them into permanent records. Others simply dried in the shade, fragile as whispers. One fascinating theory suggests that scribes sometimes inscribed secret messages in cuneiform, designed to confuse untrained readers. Early encryption, if you will. You look closer at a tablet etched with symbols resembling a river flowing beneath a starry sky. It might be a prayer for safe passage on the waters, or a calendar marking important dates for planting and harvesting. The scribe's hand is clear, deliberate, and patient. Nearby, a statue of a seated deity watches over the scene, its features softened by time but still striking. A regal figure with a horned crown, hands folded in eternal meditation. Perhaps it's Enlil, god of wind and storms, or Nana, the moon god whose silver light guides travellers by night. As you drift on, the village beyond the ziggurat comes alive with flickers of firelight. A family gathers around a clay oven, tending to bread, rising slowly in its warmth. The smell of baked barley and sesame drifts softly on the breeze. Someone hums a tune, a comforting, repetitive melody that echoes the river's flow. You remember an old Mesopotamian saying, "He who loves bread and beer will never be poor." It's true. These staples were the cornerstones of their diet, simple yet sustaining. Suddenly, your boat rocks gently as a friendly fisherman pushes off from the shore in his own small craft. He nods silently, his reed spear resting across his knees. His catch tonight seems modest, some silvery fish glinting faintly in his basket. Fish weren't just food here, they were sacred offerings, symbols of life's persistence in a land of shifting sands. You recall reading that some fishermen believed their nets could capture not only fish, but souls trapped in the river, released only through ritual blessings. The idea sends a chill down your spine, tempered by the warm night air. The river widens again, and a soft glow rises ahead. You approach a cluster of reed huts where the villagers have set up a night market. Flickering lamps illuminate baskets of pomegranates, dates, woven textiles, and pottery. The market is quiet now, but the air still hums with energy and whispered deals. A merchant sells small amulets carved from carnelian, their surfaces engraved with tiny cuneiform prayers. Nearby, a young woman offers fragrant bundles of herbs used to ward off evil spirits. These simple charms reveal the intimate mix of faith and daily life in ancient Mesopotamia. Historians continue to debate how widespread such magical practices were. Were they everyday superstitions or more formalized religious rites? Probably both. As your boat slips silently past the market, the soft echo of a harp drifts across the water, its delicate strings weaving through the night air, crafting a melody that feels like a prayer and a lullaby all at once. You lean back, eyes closed, letting the music and the river's gentle sway cradle you deeper into the night. The river's surface now reflects a sky dusted with stars, twinkling faintly through the haze like scattered grains of crushed lapis lazuli. Your reed boat glides onward, carried by the subtle current, its gentle motion syncing with the slow rhythm of your breath. Ahead, the riverbank unfolds into a wide meadow dotted with small mud brick homes, their walls softened by years of sun and dust. Smoke spirals lazily from tiny chimneys, blending into the cool night air. Lanterns flicker softly on doorsteps, casting pools of amber light onto the packed earth. You catch the faint sound of laughter, low and warm, like a fire's crackle, and follow it to a small gathering under a grove of date palms. Here, villagers sit cross-legged on woven mats, passing around bowls of thick yogurt and flatbread brushed with honey. The smell is rich and inviting, a perfect counterpoint to the cool night. You recognize this as an evening ritual of hospitality, a sacred custom in Mesopotamian culture where guests are treated as blessings, not burdens. The host's voice is soft but firm, telling stories of gods and ancestors, of floods that cleansed and fields that flourished. The tales seem endless, woven as tightly as the palm fronds overhead. Historians often highlight hospitality as a cornerstone of Mesopotamian society, where strangers and neighbors alike were offered food and shelter, perhaps as a reflection of their belief in divine justice and reciprocity. Yet, there's an odd, lesser-known tidbit. Some guests would leave behind small tokens, figurines, carved stones, or scraps of cloth, as gifts for the household spirits believed to protect the home. It was an early form of thank you, tangible and mystical at once. You watch as a child, perhaps 6 or 7, carefully places a tiny clay goat beside the fire, whispering a secret prayer before scampering off to join the others. The goat, you know, is a symbol of abundance and fertility, often appearing in myths about gods granting prosperity to humans. The group's voices soften as a slender woman rises, her hair braided with strands of silver and lapis beads. She begins a hymn to Inanna, goddess of love and war, her voice weaving through the night like a silken thread. It's mesmerizing and gentle, a lullaby that both comforts and enchants. Inanna was a complex deity, embodying fierce power and tender mercy. Her dual nature made her a favorite subject of poetry and art. Historians still debate whether her worship was more about love, warfare, or something far more symbolic, the eternal balance of opposites. The hymn fades as your boat moves onward, slipping away from the warmth of the gathering and back into the quiet embrace of the river. You notice the soft shimmer of fireflies hovering over a patch of reeds. Their flickering lights remind you of the ancient Mesopotamian belief that these tiny creatures carried messages from the gods, brief sparks of divine attention in an otherwise dark world. And as you drift beneath the vast canopy of stars, you realize this is not just a journey along a river. It's a voyage through the delicate threads of life, faith, and story that held this ancient world together. The river narrows once more, weaving between clusters of willows whose branches dip into the water like delicate fingers tracing ancient secrets. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and crushed reeds, and the occasional chirp of a nightbird punctuates the quiet symphony of crickets and frogs. As you drift closer to the riverbank, you spot the faint glow of a torchlight, flickering beneath a canopy of palm leaves. A small group of villagers is gathered there, seated around a fire whose flames dance softly, casting elongated shadows against the mud brick walls. They are engaged in what seems like a late-night storytelling circle, a ritual as old as the river itself. An elder, his face lined with decades of sun and wind, holds a worn wooden staff carved with cuneiform inscriptions. His voice, low and resonant, begins to unravel a tale of the Great Flood, not the biblical one you might know, but the Sumerian version, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the man chosen by the gods to survive the deluge. Historians generally agree that this flood myth is one of the earliest recorded stories of humanity grappling with nature's fury, reflecting the unpredictability of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. Yet scholars still debate whether it represents a real catastrophic event or a metaphor for renewal and rebirth. Nearby, a young woman quietly moulds clay into a small figurine of a fish, her fingers nimble and precise. This act isn't just art, it's a form of prayer. Such figurines were believed to protect fishermen and ensure a bountiful catch, Some archaeologists suggest these charms also symbolize the deep bond between the Mesopotamians and their watery environment, a relationship both nurturing and fraught with danger. The story unfolds as the elder describes how the gods, displeased with humanity's noise and chaos, sent torrential rains to cleanse the earth. Ziusudra built a great boat from gopher wood, guided by the wisdom of the god Enki. As the waters rose, animals and people alike sought refuge on this vessel, riding out the storm in a liminal space between destruction and hope. You imagine the ancient storyteller's voice echoing through the centuries, carried on the same winds that ripple the river's surface tonight. A soft gust stirs the fire, sending sparks upward like tiny stars breaking free. The villagers fall silent, eyes lifted to the sky as if seeking answers among the constellations. You recall that Mesopotamians closely observed the heavens, linking celestial patterns to seasonal changes and divine messages. Some believe that the very design of ziggurats mirrored the cosmos, creating a physical bridge between earth and sky. Your boat slips away quietly, leaving the circle of light behind. The river welcomes you back with gentle ripples, and you feel the pulse of life flowing beneath you. Timeless, enduring, and profoundly human. The river widens again, spreading out like a silver ribbon under the deep indigo sky. The breeze carries the faint scent of freshly cut barley from nearby fields, mingling with the subtle musk of wet reeds and distant wood smoke. The quiet splash of your oar echoes softly against the calm waters. On the far bank, you spot the soft glow of lanterns strung along a path, leading to a sprawling garden filled with date palms, fig trees, and flowering vines. This is a royal garden, a private retreat for the city's elite, where lush greenery softens the harsh geometry of mud brick walls. Gardens were a symbol of wealth and divine favour in Mesopotamia, often featuring intricate irrigation channels that showcased human ingenuity harnessing the rivers. You imagine the gentle flow of water trickling through stone basins, the faint rustle of leaves stirred by the evening breeze. As you drift closer, the sound of soft chanting reaches your ears, rhythmic and hypnotic. Inside the garden, priests and priestesses perform a nocturnal ritual dedicated to Nabu, the god of writing and wisdom. Their voices rise and fall like the river's current, a prayer for knowledge and clarity. There's a fascinating detail about Mesopotamian rituals. Sometimes they involved the careful preparation of clay tablets inscribed with prayers, which were then ritually fed to the gods by being submerged briefly in water or buried in sacred soil. This practice symbolized the intimate exchange between human devotion and divine response. You watch as a young scribe delicately writes on a fresh tablet, the sharp reed stylus tapping softly in the lantern light. The art of cuneiform writing was complex, with hundreds of characters representing sounds and ideas. Some scholars still debate how widely literacy spread beyond scribes and priests. Was it an exclusive skill or more common than we think? Nearby, a small fountain burbles quietly, its water reflecting flickering torchlight. Fish swim lazily beneath lily pads, their scales catching glimmers of moonlight. Fish were not only a food source, but also held symbolic meanings. Some believed they represented fertility and transformation. You lean back in your boat and listen to the murmured prayers, mingling with the night's natural chorus. The ritual feels like a bridge between worlds, the tangible and the unseen, the mortal and the divine. Suddenly, a soft laughter floats from a nearby pavilion where a group of musicians plays lyres and drums. The melodies are soothing and slow, perfect for this moment of calm. You smile, thinking how even in ancient times, Music was a balm for the soul, a companion to quiet reflection by the river. As you drift away from the garden, the sounds and scents linger, wrapping you in a gentle embrace. The river continues its timeless journey, carrying your boat through a world woven from earth, water, faith, and stories. The water carries you further into the night, its surface smooth and unbroken, mirroring the vast canopy of stars overhead. The air has cooled, and the soft rustle of palm fronds in the breeze feels like a whisper, soothing and familiar. You notice tiny ripples spreading out from your boat, delicate as the flutter of moth wings. Ahead, the river bends toward a small village, where the faint glow of lamps flickers warmly against the dark shapes of mud brick houses. The village's day is not quite over. Voices drift on the air, low and conversational, mingling with the occasional bark of a dog or the clatter of pottery. You glide silently past a cluster of reed huts, nestled at the water's edge. Here you spot a group of women seated around a fire, their hands busy weaving baskets from reeds. Their fingers move skillfully, intertwining strands into tight, sturdy containers destined for grain, fish, or even offerings to the gods. Basket weaving was a vital craft, passed down through generations, and archaeologists have found remnants of these baskets preserved in ancient tombs. Some believed that the patterns woven into baskets carried symbolic meanings, signs of protection, fertility, or even secret messages between makers. Nearby, an elderly man tends to a small kiln, carefully firing clay vessels, and the soft glow from inside the kiln pulses like a heartbeat, illuminating his focused face. Pottery was essential for daily life, holding water, storing food, or serving in sacred rituals. You recall an intriguing tidbit. Some Mesopotamian potters included small marks, or signatures, on their work, a form of early branding. These marks sometimes took the shape of animals or symbols that identified the artisan or workshop, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of trade and reputation. The night deepens as you drift past fields of barley, the stalks swaying faintly in the breeze. Barley was the staple grain used for bread, porridge, and even beer, a drink that held social and religious importance. You remember that one unusual ritual involved the barley goddess, a deity who personified fertility and the cycle of growth and decay. During harvest, villagers might enact symbolic dramas honoring her, reenacting the sowing and reaping to ensure a bountiful future. Historians still debate whether these ceremonies were primarily agricultural rites or also a form of early theatre, blending myth and community life. As your boat moves slowly onward, you sense the quiet pulse of the village settling into sleep, the flicker of lanterns dimming one by one. The river's gentle lullaby carries you further, deeper into the heart of this ancient world. The night deepens as your boat slides through a narrow channel fringed with tall reeds, whispering secrets to the stars above. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of dates drying on woven mats, a sweet reminder of the harvest season still lingering in the fields beyond. In the distance, a cluster of lights glows softly from a large compound surrounded by sturdy mud brick walls. The home of a wealthy merchant, or perhaps a minor noble. The courtyard is alive with quiet activity. Servants move like shadows, carrying water jars or tending to small fires. The flickering lanterns cast warm, golden hues over painted walls decorated with delicate floral motifs and geometric patterns. You imagine the stories these walls could tell. Tales of banquets where guests reclined on cushions, sipping wine sweetened with honey, and poets recited verses praising gods and kings. Mesopotamian royal courts were centers of culture and power, where art, music, and diplomacy intertwined like the intricate patterns on their textiles. A quirky fact: some Mesopotamian nobles wore elaborately beaded wigs made from human or sheep's hair, often scented with aromatic oils. These wigs were status symbols, but also believed to offer protection from evil spirits lurking in the night. You listen to faint laughter, mingling with the soft strumming of a lyre, imagining musicians performing a slow, haunting melody that lulls guests toward dreams. Music played a vital role in Mesopotamian rituals and daily life alike, soothing worries and connecting people to the divine. Outside the walls, a gardener tends to a small grove of pomegranate trees, their bright fruit glowing faintly even under moonlight. Pomegranates symbolized fertility and life's cyclical nature, often appearing in myth and ritual as tokens of abundance and rebirth. Nearby, you notice a small shrine dedicated to the god Dumuzi, lord of shepherds and fertility. The shrine's humble altar is adorned with fresh palm fronds and a bowl of water reflecting the starlight. Ritual offerings like these helped maintain harmony between humans, gods, and nature, a delicate balance vital to survival in Mesopotamia's challenging environment. Scholars still debate the extent to which such rituals shaped political power, but it's clear that religious devotion was deeply entwined with leadership and social order. Your boat drifts silently away from the merchant's courtyard, the echoes of soft music and distant voices fading into the night. The river's gentle current carries you onward, past fields, villages, and sacred spaces, weaving you into the endless story of the ancient Mesopotamian world. The river widens into a slow-moving lagoon, where the moonlight spills silver across glassy water. Reeds sway gently at the edges, and the distant call of a night heron pierces the stillness. Your boat floats quietly, the only sound the soft lapping of water against its hull. You see fishermen on the far shore, silhouetted against the faint glow of oil lamps. They work with patient rhythm, casting nets woven from flax, hoping for a catch to sustain their families. Fishing was essential in Mesopotamia, both a livelihood and a source of sacred symbolism. Fish represented life's abundance, but also the mysterious depths beyond human control. Nearby, an old woman tends to a small fire, roasting dates wrapped in fig leaves. The aroma is warm and inviting, mingling with the cool river breeze. She hums a tune in an ancient tongue, perhaps a lullaby or a charm to protect her household. You notice a peculiar object beside her, a small carved stone in the shape of a serpent, worn smooth by time. Serpent motifs were common in Mesopotamian art, sometimes associated with healing and transformation. Some scholars argue these symbols reflect early understandings of medicine, while others see them as protective talismans. The woman's voice blends with the river's gentle murmur as she begins a quiet prayer to Tammuz, the god linked to vegetation cycles and seasonal death and rebirth. The myth of Tammuz and his bride Inanna speaks to the eternal dance of life and loss, echoed in the changing tides of the river. Historians still debate whether Tammuz's cult represented an agricultural fertility rite or a more complex expression of human emotion and spirituality. Your boat glides past a small shrine illuminated by flickering oil lamps. Inside, votive figurines of goats and birds stand in neat rows, offerings from villagers seeking favour or protection. These miniature statues capture the intimate connection between people and their gods, a bond woven from daily hopes and fears. As you float further into the night, you feel the pulse of the river and its stories flowing through you. A gentle reminder that this ancient world, with its rituals and rhythms, still breathes beneath the stars. The river narrows again, its banks cloaked in thick stands of papyrus and tall grasses that sway softly in the night breeze. The water is cooler here, clearer, and you notice the faint shimmer of small fish darting beneath the surface, like shadows in a dream. A quiet village emerges on the horizon where a few clay ovens glow warmly against the darkened silhouettes of houses. Smoke curls upward, carrying the smell of baking bread and simmering stew. Simple scents that tell stories of families gathered close, sharing the fruits of the day. You imagine the baker, a woman with strong hands, shaping dough under flickering oil lamps. Bread was the cornerstone of the Mesopotamian diet, often made from barley or emmer wheat. It was both sustenance and symbol, a daily gift from the gods that connected people to the earth and sky. A little boy runs along the riverbank, chasing fireflies that sparkle like tiny stars caught in his outstretched hands. This simple joy, you think, transcends time and culture. Nearby, you glimpse a small shrine built from reeds and mud, decorated with painted symbols. Inside, a statue of the goddess Ninhursag, the mother of all, sits surrounded by offerings of fruits and grains. She was revered as the goddess of fertility and birth, protector of mothers and children. Curiously, some scholars suggest that Ninhursag's worship involved rituals using plants and herbs believed to aid childbirth and healing. These ancient practices hint at early medicinal knowledge intertwined with spiritual belief. You watch as a group of women sing softly, their voices weaving together in a gentle hymn. The melody rises and falls like the river's own breath, a lullaby for the night and a prayer for tomorrow. Historians still debate the exact nature of these communal songs. Were they purely religious, or also a way to strengthen social bonds and pass on oral traditions? Your boat drifts onward, carried by the river's steady current, as the village fades into the darkness and the stars overhead gleam brighter, guiding you deeper into the heart of this ancient, living world. The river widens once more, opening into a broad expanse where the water reflects the moon like a vast mirror. Papyrus boats glide silently nearby, their sails catching the faintest breeze. The air smells of damp earth and blooming lotus flowers, a scent both calming and mysterious. On the riverbanks, you glimpse a small temple complex with towering columns carved in relief, their surfaces etched with scenes of gods and mortals intertwined. The temple glows softly under torchlight, a beacon of sacred presence in the still night. You imagine priests performing midnight rites inside, moving slowly through shadowed halls as they prepare offerings of incense and barley cakes. Temples in Mesopotamia were centers of not just worship, but also administration and learning, where scribes copied tablets and stored records. Here's a curious fact. Some temples included House of the Gods, rooms filled with miniature models of the city and its people, a way to symbolically protect and manage the community through ritual. You watch as a priestess pours water from a carved vessel into a basin, the ripples catching torchlight like liquid stars. Water rituals were believed to cleanse not only the body but the spirit, bridging the human and divine. A nearby chamber holds a library of clay tablets inscribed with hymns, myths, and prayers. The very act of writing was sacred. Cuneiform signs were seen as gifts from the god Nabu, carrying divine wisdom. Some scholars still debate whether temples were primarily religious sanctuaries or the ancient world's first bureaucratic centers, blending faith and governance in ways we are only beginning to understand. As you drift away from the temple, the sounds of chanting and soft bells fade into the night, replaced by the gentle croak of frogs and the whisper of reeds. The river carries you onward, steady and sure, beneath a sky full of stars that have witnessed countless nights just like this one, across thousands of years and stories. The current gently nudges your boat as you glide into a quieter stretch of the Euphrates, where the riverbanks widen into fertile floodplains dotted with wildflowers and low shrubs. The air is crisp, filled with the faint scent of fresh earth and blooming acacias. You notice farmers working under the soft glow of lanterns, their movements slow and deliberate as they tend to young shoots of barley and flax. Night irrigation is common in this region, where canals deliver life-giving water to parched fields, a testament to Mesopotamian mastery over the environment. You watch a man guide a wooden plough pulled by an ox, the soil turning rich and dark beneath the blade. Agriculture was the backbone of Mesopotamian civilization, and innovations like the shaduf, a hand-operated device to lift water, transformed dry land into productive farmland. An intriguing fact, some farmers used clay tokens shaped like animals or goods as a primitive accounting system to keep track of harvests and trades, an early precursor to writing itself. Nearby, a group of women gather by a fire, preparing dough to bake into flatbreads on heated stones. The aroma blends with the earthiness of the fields, creating a comforting nighttime symphony. You overhear a whispered tale about a mysterious figure known as the river spirit, believed to protect the waters and ensure their bounty. Some villagers leave offerings of bread and dates at riverbanks during planting season, hoping to appease this unseen guardian. Historians still debate whether these beliefs originated from practical respect for natural cycles or deeper spiritual convictions about the life force flowing through water. As your boat drifts away from the fields, you feel a sense of peace, the quiet rhythms of farming life echoing through the centuries, carried gently on the river's endless flow. The river bends through a stretch of land where the night seems deeper, quieter, as if the stars themselves have paused to listen. You drift past a grove of date palms, their tall trunks casting long shadows that ripple across the water like ancient runes. To your left, a gathering of huts built from woven reeds glows softly with torchlight. These are the homes of riverfolk, fishermen, reed cutters, and storytellers who live close to the water, drawing both sustenance and wisdom from its depths. One man sits at the edge of the bank, carving a small flute from river cane. He hums a low, wandering melody that matches the gentle swaying of the trees. Music, after all, was not only for celebration in Mesopotamia, it served as a guide through grief, love, and everything in between. A curious fringe detail. Some Mesopotamian musicians were buried with their instruments, suggesting they were believed to play in the afterlife, soothing even the gods with their songs. The man's tune is joined by the rhythmic splash of oars as another boat passes nearby, its passenger carrying baskets full of freshwater clams. Shellfish were a modest but important part of the riverside diet, often gathered by women and children in the early mornings. You notice a cluster of clay figurines sitting atop a stone beside the hut, a turtle, a star, and a fish. Tiny tokens left by children, or perhaps meant as charms. The Mesopotamians believed in many layers of unseen beings, protective spirits, mischievous imps, and divine messengers who pass silently in the night. Historians still debate whether these household gods were formal deities or personal spirits invoked in daily life, but they appear often in letters and rituals, always close to the heart. As your boat glides on, the music fades, replaced by the rustle of reeds and the gentle creak of wood. You pass beneath an arch of leaning palms, the stars twinkling through their fronds, and you feel the river exhale, long, soft, and ancient. The river begins to narrow, as if guiding you gently toward a final, quiet destination. The air is softer here, tinged with the perfume of night-blooming flowers and the hush of distant crickets. You drift past stone ruins, half swallowed by vines, crumbling columns and moss-covered steps that once led to something sacred. A single torch flickers ahead at the water's edge, revealing an old man seated on a smooth rock, gazing into the dark current. He wears a robe the colour of dusk, his hands folded over a lapful of reeds. You float close enough to hear him whisper, not to you, but to the river. He murmurs a hymn to Enki, god of wisdom and fresh water. Enki was believed to dwell in the Apsu, the primeval waters beneath the world, and was often shown with streams pouring from his shoulders. He was the patron of craftsmen, healers, and dreamers, those who work quietly to shape and soothe the world. The man lifts a carved bowl and pours a libation into the water, the liquid catching the starlight in a silent spiral. It's an old ritual, meant to return part of the gift the river has given. A fringe detail. Some early cuneiform tablets were actually incantations, spells and charms meant to be sung during offerings, etched in delicate script so sacred it was sometimes buried with the dead. The old man's whisper fades, and you watch as he places a small clay tablet into the river. It sinks slowly, as if reluctant to leave the air. The Mesopotamians often recorded prayers and promises on tablets, sealing them in temples or casting them into the waters. Historians still debate whether these acts were symbolic or thought to be directly heard by the gods, whether a clay plea could ripple through divine currents. Your boat glides past him, silent as a shadow. The river is growing shallower now, the current easing, the banks drawing close in an embrace of reeds and earth. You hear a nightjar call from a branch overhead, and for a moment everything stills. Boat, air, thought. This is the end of your river's path and the beginning of the quiet that follows. And now, as the stars stretch long across the water and the final eddies slip past your drifting vessel, your journey down the river of stars comes to a close. The voices of the night soften, frogs settling into their reeds, the last fire dying low in a distant village, the breath of the river fading to a whisper against the shore. The sky remains open above you, filled with constellations that the ancient priests once charted, believing the fates of empires lay among them. You feel the boat stilling, barely rocking now. The current has brought you as far as it could. There's nothing more to do, no task to finish, no place to be. Just you, the stars, and the hush of the ancient world pressing in like a blanket. Let the air cool around your limbs, and the last sense of burning oil and river clay settle in your mind. Let the silence grow long, warm, and welcome. Whatever worries travelled with you tonight can be left at the river's edge, to drift away in a clay bowl under the stars. You've seen sacred temples and quiet farms, heard forgotten prayers and soft music echoing through the reeds. The journey is complete, and you are gently returned, not back, but forward, carried like a whisper into sleep. May your dreams be calm, deep, and filled with flickering torchlight on ancient stone.